Well, good afternoon, friends. My name is Rich Larson. I know Karl through the same way many of you do, through the performing arts community in town. I thought of starting this out by calling for places, which you all would recognize and take your seats. But thank you for coming to this celebration of the life of our friend Karl Barbee. When his friends Julie and Catherine asked me if I would provide the eulogy for Karl, I had a bit of trepidation, as you can imagine. I've known Karl since 1993, but how did I know Karl? So a few things came to mind in answering that question. First, I knew Mr. Karl through his tenure as a teacher, choreographer, and dancer with Helen Gauss's Scranton Civic Ballet. Over the years, he taught all three of my children at the dancing school and performed, as many of you know, and may have even seen, an assortment of roles in the various productions staged by the Civic. His lovingly tippled Grandpa Stahlbaum in the Civic Ballet's Christmas production of The Nutcracker was an annual crowd pleaser, as was his portrayal of the largest member of the army commanded by the Mouse King. The moment where that towering rodent hoisted an unsuspecting diminutive member of the Cavalier's toy soldier army over his head was something that never failed to put a smile on this old Scrooge's face. But Karl, given his imposing stature, was also called upon regularly to play the titular character in the Civic's junior company version of The Selfish Giant, a ballet where the miserly giant's icy heart is eventually melted by the children intruding in his garden after realizing that their visits foretold the coming of spring and rejuvenation with the changing of the seasons. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. Very nice. The turning of the seasons, like one of Mr. Karl's pirouettes, revealed the goodness in the giant that we already knew was there. And that goodness was in Mr. Karl as well. On the subject of giants, the book and movie and musical Big Fish included a character named Karl, spelled with a K, Karl the Giant. Interestingly, as these things happen cosmically, the somewhat recent University of Scranton Players theater production of the musical version of Big Fish featured one of Karl's dearest friends, Megan Esty, in an on-stage role, a rare phenomenon for her, to be sure. And more interestingly still, because Megan just recently married her college sweetheart, Dan Morrow, who portrayed Karl the Giant, you guessed it, in that same production. And moreover, the plot in Big Fish, like the story of Karl Barbee's life, is full of rich, colorful adventures and characters. In the story of Big Fish, Karl the Giant meets Edward Bloom, the storytelling salesman father, the protagonist character, who at the behest of the beleaguered town offers himself up as a meal to the marauding, hungry giant. After a time when things have settled down, Karl and Edward discuss the town, wanting the giant to leave. Edward speaks. "What's your name, giant?" "Karl." "Mine's Edward. And truthfully, I do want you to leave, Karl, but I want to leave with you. You think this town is too small for you. Well, it's too small for a man of my ambition. I can't see staying here a day longer." Karl asks, "You don't like it?" Edward replies, "I love every square inch of it, but I can feel the edges closing in on me. A man's life can only grow to a certain size in a place like this. So what do you say? Join me." And the giant does. Karl the Giant, never felt this town was too small for him. In fact, our Karl the unselfish giant, found much fertile ground here, particularly in the arts community in which he was so deeply immersed. He did love every square inch of it. This arts garden he sowed and cultivated. He became known as a fixture in so many of our collective creative endeavors over the years, performing with the dearly departed players and their wildly popular Dunmore Cemetery tour, portraying historical characters on the Heritage Express Steamtown train excursions with his frequent collaborator and dear friend Julie Estey. His work with the musical and theatrical productions at Act Out Theater and Kappa. His aforementioned contributions to the area dance community. His acting roles in locally produced quality film productions by Scranton Films. The list of his collaborations is too numerous to mention everyone in Karl's orbit. On a side note, if you find yourself needing a Karl Barbee fix, please refer to his appearance in the Def Leppard video, Hysteria, from 1987. He appears as one of the dancers in that video. It's sure to put a smile on your face. Indeed, our Karl the Giant was just the right size for many of our endeavors, and we celebrate his contributions and know his absence will be felt in a myriad of ways. I do know that there was also a very private Karl, a personal side that he shared on occasion with me, perhaps more so with some of you. That Karl the Giant was unassumingly sophisticated, notably cultured, fiercely intelligent, the consummate Southern gentleman. Karl possessed a quick wit and a wicked sense of humor that would sometimes belie the backwoods North Carolina, did I say it right? Southern accent that would sometimes, intentionally or not, sneak into conversation. Karl's command of multiple languages was impressive. One of my sons commented that Karl was the only person he had ever met who was fluent in Icelandic. I'm sure that's true for many of us. This same son mentioned that Karl was the first person he had ever heard use the word umlaut. You know, those two little diacritical dots over a vowel in German. Using it legitimately, correctly, in a sentence. His passion for language left an impression and did not go unnoticed. Karl's passion also extended to his love of animals, particularly his beloved cat, Sable, who is most certainly missing his presence at this time. During civic ballet productions he and I collaborated on during downtime, many of us have been there, right? We're holding for lights, costumes, sound, whatever it is. Karl and I, as one does in the theater, talked about food. And I came to recognize that Karl's sophistication extended to his Epicurean tastes as well, often describing exotic and cultivated pairings of food and drink, particularly cheese and wine. Yes, this Karl the Giant, Mr. Karl Barbee, was truly a Renaissance man. And to circle back to Big Fish, the character of Karl the Giant is but one of many stories told through the eyes of Edward Bloom, the protagonist, who is at the heart of the story a man who couldn't separate fact from fiction. But our Karl the Giant was real and singular, tangible and meaningful, remembered by all of us gathered here today. And to quote a line from Big Fish, when a man's stories are remembered, then he is immortal. So in closing, my hope is that our Karl the Giant, Karl Barbee, is remembered by each of us in our own special way, cherished by us for that Karl that each of us knew. As you remember Karl, please remember to dance, to sing, to act, even if it's a little silly. I think he'd like that. And at this time, I'd like to invite folks, if they wish, following the comments, to share your stories or memories about Karl with each other, to send him off with a series of encores. But before that, please join me in a final standing ovation for our friend, Karl Barbee. Thank you very much. If anyone wants to come up and share some stories or memories about Karl, please feel free to. The mic is hot.
Hi, I'm Lynn. My husband Gary is with me. I've known Karl since 1978. So probably, other than my family by choice now, I've probably known him longer than anyone else here. I know him as Karl, not as a performer. I know him as a best friend, someone who I loved without limit. We had a lot of fun together. We spent a lot of time together over the years. He would come to visit us, and some of you may have heard about our farm and historic home, which he loved, and we always had a wonderful time there. And he loved the animals, and our cats adored him. I like to think of him as working with the young people as the Pied Piper. And he was, with young people. The eyes would just light up. And I have a story to share, and it's about Valentine's Day. And I have several stories about different Valentine's Day, but I've chosen the one that's the cleanest. And I'm happily married, so let me just get that straight, okay? Odd choice of word. My husband used to go for a week diving in Cozumel, and it just so happened that sometimes it was over Valentine's Day. And it also coincided with President's Day weekend, and then Karl would take that weekend off and come to the farm, and we would just spend a few days being goofballs, just being us. And so one Valentine's Day, he says, "Let's do a romantic dinner." And I was all for it, because I knew he meant we're gonna eat. And we're gonna drink. And so off we went to the grocery store, and I still remember we bought lamb chops. I mean, this was like, I don't know, manna to Karl, red meat, right? And so we went to the liquor store to get wine. Now, if anybody has ever been to a wine store with Karl, patience is required, because it's going to take at least an hour. And you can be sure he's going to choose the best bottle of wine, not by price. He knew wine. I like to think I have something to do with that, trying to teach him over the years, and also cooking. I taught him a lot about cooking, because I went to culinary school. And so we love to cook together. So I had frequented this wine store, and so we got 2 bottles of wine. He chose one and I chose one. And we go up to the counter, and he puts his arm around me, and he says, "Her husband's out of town." Oh, thank you, Karl. That was so wonderful. Now, it gets actually better or worse depending on who you are. We had a candlelight, which is lovely, in an old stone house, and we put music on, and we had a bottle of wine with while we were cooking and with the appetizers, and then we had another bottle of wine with dinner. So by the end, I think we were pretty snockered, but happy, just thrilled, just having a wonderful time. So I mentioned the next day, I said, house guests that he knew have complained about one of the beds upstairs. And, I always would use Karl if I needed muscle or anything on the top shelf. And he still, to this day, there's a mug in our house, his mug, that's on the top shelf in the kitchen. So we said, okay, well, let's go to, I guess it was Sam's Club. And I know you're going to be with me right away. We bought a mattress. I'm sorry, but I was clueless, So you know what happened. We get up there, I'm paying for it, arm goes around me. Her husband's out of town. So let me just say that, we're all made of stardust. And we're all made of energy. And Karl's energy was boundless. Love is energy. And he was full of that energy. And he wasn't just a star. He isn't just a star. He is a galaxy. And I will love him forever. Thank you.
My name is Robert Powell. Karl and I were good friends for about 35 or 40 years. I had a good friend whose name was Joe Pasco, and Joe was a terrific person. I knew him for many, many years. As it turns out, Karl also knew Joe Pasco. So I met Karl through Joe Pasco. So a good friend of mine and a good friend of Joe's brought us together. It was a very nice coming together of kindred spirits. Joe and Karl really made a big difference in my life, and Karl especially. For Karl, he subscribed strongly to this wonderful statement on the cover of this playbill that we all have. I don't know whether that was Karl's idea or whether it was a member of the family, but it's a superb idea. And the subtext, "All the world's a stage." And if anybody believed that, it was Karl Barbee. Theater was a major part of his life. Performance was a major part of his life. And he performed in dance and theater all over the world. In Iceland, in Great Britain, in France, everywhere he went, he was on a stage. Performance was very important for Karl. And it made a big difference in his life and the life of other people who came in contact with him. He was just an extraordinary person. And so having All the World's a Stage on the cover of this playbill is really quite a wonderful tribute to Karl. And that statement, as you probably know, is from As You Like It by Shakespeare. And it's Jacques giving the celebrated monologue in As You Like It. Shakespeare, by the way, is filled with comments about performance. Everything in Shakespeare is about performance. In Richard III, for example, when Richard III says, a horse, a kingdom for my horse," the horse is important, but more important is Richard III wants the show to go on. Don't pull the curtain down yet, I'm not finished. And the same thing in Henry IV. Before the Battle of Agincourt, his speech to the troops is inspiring in an unbelievable way. They're putting themselves at great risk, but the performance is the important part. They go to France and they beat the heck out of the French and they win the Battle of Agincourt, and history goes on from there. But Shakespeare is full of this idea of performance, and performance for Karl was a big thing. He affected the lives of so many people by his performances and by his initiation to the notion of performance for young people. Over the years, on more than one occasion, I was backstage when Karl was either directing or supervising something backstage, whether it might have been a play or a dance or troupe or of some kind of performance. And as most of you in the room know, Karl was a master at dealing with young people and helping them to cross that bridge into the realm of theater. At one point, I remember being backstage at a dance performance. I don't know where it was or when it was, but there were a lot of new people being introduced to the world of dance. And there were a lot of nerves, and people were wondering, can I do this, and so on. And Karl was in charge of getting the curtain up and down. And let's say a young person whose name was Mary Jane, I'm just making that up, but Mary Jane came over to Karl as I was standing not far away, and she said, "Oh, Mr. Barbee, I can't do this. I'm too nervous. Mr. Barbee, what am I going to do?" Karl, bless his heart, said, "Mary Jane, listen to me. That curtain is going up in 3 minutes, and you're going to go out there and you're going to dance like Baryshnikov. Are you ready?" The curtain went up, and out she went. The most remarkable thing about it is her life was changed forever by that experience. She crossed the bridge, she got herself together, and she grew. I've seen that happen several times with Karl. When stage fright, he knew what was going on, and he knew what he had to say to make it work, and it worked. And the wonderful thing is, the life of that young person and hundreds of young people were changed by Karl Barbee. You can't ask for a greater tribute about passing on a tradition than that. It meant a lot to Karl. He may not have said anything, but deep in his heart, he knew it was a life-changing experience for them, and he was just passing on the torch for the next generation. And I think that's wonderful. Karl was a great guy. Every one of us loved him dearly. We'll all miss him very much, and God bless Karl Barbee. Thank you.
I knew Karl from opposite side of the world, as everyone here, essentially. I was from the Tonkanic studio that he taught at. I started very late for a dance career. He never, ever made me feel that way. He always told me that he walked into a dance class by accident at 20 years old, so he knew for a fact I could make it. I did dance and theater with him for a few years. Only recently now had we stopped, but we had never ceased contact or ceased supporting each other in everything that he did. I would always, whenever he told me he had a show, we would be there that night. My favorite memory is we did a also extremely not known performance of The Christmas Schooner. It's a play about people having stories, and people's stories and how they affect people, and how little some nobody from Germany comes over as an immigrant and starts the entire reason we have Christmas trees every Christmas. He played opposite to me in this part. I was his daughter-in-law, essentially. And through the course of the play, the man who started the Christmas trees, who was Karl's son in the production, died while transporting trees from place to place. And we sang songs together about death and losing someone who was so important. And how it is so important to tell people's stories. And that the father and the wife in the story were the reason they continued to bring trees from one place to another. And all of it was just about stories being told. The lines in a face tell a story. And Karl was a man full of more stories than I've ever heard somebody ever tell. I can't even track all of the places that he's been and told me about. I just was talking to my sister the other day, and we had completely forgotten about the time that he spent working with racehorses and following them around. I think of him as this great performer, and then he's just like, yeah, one summer I just followed around and scooped horse poop. He was a wonderful man inside and out, and I am constantly reminded of standing on the stage singing those songs about telling those stories. And they have stayed with me every day since I heard of his passing. And every day when I remember that, I find someone and tell them a story about my friend named Karl.
I'm going to be very short. And I am short. See, if you see the slideshow and you see me on those pictures, you'll see, Karl and I, every time we met, we always took a picture together because I'm short and he's not. But I just want to thank the family for allowing the community to do this and be part of this moment with you. I know it's extremely hard for you and it's extremely hard for everyone because we all have just a little bit of Karl. And Rich, it was fitting that you talked about Big Fish because that's one of my favorite films. And I never thought about it that way. And now I'm gonna watch it after I finish this. So thank you for doing this. My name is Luz, and I had the opportunity to meet Karl back in 2014 at a film set. And the last thing we did, we were at a film set. So I am so excited just to be here because even though it's a sad moment for everyone, just look at this, right? I mean, you see it every time we lose someone. It's always beautiful when you see the people behind that and just how many lives he touched. When I started seeing Facebook, I was like, wow, like I know nothing about Karl, right? I only knew my side. So just, a few weeks ago, he said, we just finished the film together where he met just a lot of wonderful kids, and he helped me through it because when I work with young children, I don't have what Karl has, and his presence just being there with all the younger kids, younger talent, the film is better because of him. And it was just, he said to me, Luz, I think this is what I want to do full time now. This is what I want to do. And it just made me so happy because it's what we all do, right? We try to be good people and just make an impact in life, and just seeing that he did this pretty much everywhere. Just to share one small story about me and Karl, one holiday, he called me. He said, Luz, he said, when Carl called, I had to answer because he doesn't call very often. You know, he doesn't like to text, but if he called, he had something to say. So he called and he said, Luz, I'm very excited. We have to meet for coffee. I have something for you. I said, okay. He's like, I have a holiday gift for you. I said, okay. I was like, I didn't get him anything. So now, you know, and we met at the mall, and he comes here. He's so excited, and he takes out a block of cheese. And I was like, oh. He was working at a cheese place in Pittston, and he said, look at it. It's Cabrales cheese. That's my last name, right? And he's like, are you related to the Cabrales in Spain? Like, and I was like, no, I'm not. But I was like so excited. He was so excited just to show me that the block of cheese said Cabrales on it. And he said, you got to tell me how it is. He's like, I don't think I'm going to like it. But he said that. I don't think I'm going to like it, but I think you will. And it was very good. But just like those little things that he did, they were so special, not just in filmmaking, not just in theater, just being a great person overall. And I'm just so thankful to be part of this moment with you in the community. So thank you.
My name is Christine. I first met Carl when we did a show. I have to hold the mic. When we did a show at the Corner Bistro Dinner Theater. And he always had the opportunity to be my husband. No, I'm just kidding. But he was just a wonderful man to deal with. And I have to tell you a story about Carl, too. And it's not a joke, even though that's how we would start most of our conversations. Chris, I have a joke for you. That was Carl. So I would always tell him about this place in town where they had this special pizza that was a chicken marsala pizza. And I would say, me and my husband went to this place and they had this great pizza. And Carl said, you keep telling me that. When are we going for this pizza? Right? So I said, okay, well, let's go Friday night. Okay, we'll go Friday. So we go and we get to the restaurant and we order the pizza, and Carl's like, what kind of wine do you have? Do you have a wine list? And everybody knows, like everybody knows a wine. Carl's got to have his. So, of course, we were at this little corner bar. They didn't have a big wine. I guess I'll have the red, he says. But we had the pizza, and he absolutely loved it. And from then on, we would say, remember that time we went for that pizza? So Carl just loved food, and he loved to talk about food, and we loved to eat food, and I loved to do it with him, and I loved Carl. But if you look at the back of your playbill, there's a little poem on it, and it actually is from a song from Wicked that's called For Good. And Carl and I always had this thing. He was a great dancer, and he was a good singer, but he used to say to me, "You're just a good singer." So Carl, I'm gonna sing this little snippet of this song for you because I know that, and I'm gonna try to get through it without crying, but because I know that he would want me to sing a little something for him. It well may be that we will never meet again in this lifetime. So let me say before we part, so much of me was made from what I learned from you. You'll be with me like a handprint on my heart. And now I know whatever our stories end, I know you have rewritten mine by being my friend. Like a ship blown from its mooring by the wind of the sea, like a sea dropped by a skybird in a distant wood. Who can say if I've been changed for the better? But Because I knew you, because I knew you, I have been changed for good.
I'm Julie Esty, and I performed for many, many years with Karl in many different capacities. And it was always a treat, because you just never knew what Karl was going to do or Karl was going to say to make it memorable. And he is going to be missed by this community a great deal. Karl had a great love of music, all different kinds of music. In fact, this summer, he always wanted to see Yes, and we managed to get him to see Yes on the mountain from row 4 due to our dear friend Catherine in the back, and he loved music and he was so happy. And over the last week, there's been a lot of different tunes that have been going through my head, but I think the one that really expresses it the best is by Jackson Browne. So I would like to send Karl off with a few words. And the lines from the song were written by Jackson Browne because he had a couple of losses in his life. He lost a dear friend in a fire. He lost his wife. And he lost, some of you might remember, a lovely female singer named Nicolette Larson. So this song kind of addresses those losses, and today it's going to address our loss here. As I said, the song is called Into a Dancer, or For a Dancer, and the lines of the song go, into a dancer you have grown, from the seed somebody else has thrown. Go on ahead and throw some seeds of your own, and somewhere between the time you arrive and the time you go may lie the reason you were alive that you'll never know. Karl threw so many seeds here, and they have grown, and they are growing into wonderful things. And there were so many reasons. So many students, fellow performers, and friends. He was such a big light in so many lives. And I don't know how we go forward, but I know that we have to, because to not would be such a disservice. Can't, won't, not, were not in Karl's vocabulary. He was so positive to everyone, and I know that he pushed, pulled, and dragged me forward like an old Buick many times. And got me out on that stage, got me to do things that were so out of my comfort zone. And because of it, my life and the lives of so many others are so much better. And not just me, my daughter too. We all have a big hole in our heart now because of Karl's loss. But what we need to do is take all those laughs and memories and fill that hole with them and go on and move forward. And you know, Karl and I had many talks about the other side, and Karl thought that when it was done, it was just done. And I would say, well, I don't really think so. After spending 25, 30 years in a cemetery, there is no done, there is something more. I'm sure you found out by now that I'm right. And dude, I'll catch you on the flip side.
Oh, I'm Jimmy, Carl's brother. And I want to first thank all of y'all for coming. And you really are like immediate family, not extended, but really immediate family, because he felt very at home here to where he could express his talents and push people to be their very best. And I don't have a prepared statement or anything. I would drop it or lose it anyway if I had it. So, but just a couple of things about growing up with a big brother. And you don't know what a big brother is until you have one, how important they are. Because I was relatively clueless most of my childhood of what to do next, and I could look to him to figure out how he acted. And I've got an older sister here, Chris, as well. I could look to them to see what am I supposed to do next. And I just remember this. These are just little vignettes, just little examples. I just remember that he had the courage to just try things, try new things, working with the racehorses. In anthropology and archaeology at ECU is where he first felt the love for history and prehistory. So I would go and visit him at ECU while he was in school and see all the bones and the Indian parts and things like that in the labs. And he would, wherever he laid his head, he could sleep and call it home for whatever amount of time he needed to be there. And I am the exact retentive opposite in that way. That everything has to be fluffed and laid out just right, and I might feel comfortable enough to drop off and call it home, but he wasn't like that. He went out in the field and did work with the Explorer Scouts, Cimarron, New Mexico, for weeks on end in the field at Hyco Reservoir. It was going to be Hyco Reservoir, doing surveys in archaeology. Just lay out a palette, and that was it. That's all he needed. And I went to visit him in New York City 2 or 3 times, and he had a small apartment up in the upper Manhattan, 93rd Street, I think. And he had a pallet on the floor and a small efficiency apartment, which is all you had in New York unless you were rolling in money. And so we slept on a pallet on the floor. And he slept hard. It was hard to wake him up. And in the middle of the night, I was awakened, more Princess and the Pea demeanor. I was awakened by dinner plates being thrown out a window up above us and smashed into the building next door and tinkling down the wall. And I woke him up then to say, what is happening? And he said, oh, those are the people upstairs. They get into fights and throw things at each other. And it didn't bother him, so that was my point. But I could go on and on and on. I'll have all these to cherish forever, and they'll be just as vivid now and next year as they were 20 years ago. So I can keep those forever. But at home, again, looking to see what he would do, heavily into music, he had a Kalamazoo guitar, which was painted with house paint and was a cheap version of Gibson's. They also made Kalamazoos. That's what they call them. It's right on the headstock. And he played it and played it and played it, and he was the rock star of our neighborhood. And all the boys wanted to come over and hear Karl play and learn how to play all the popular tunes. Well, anyway, this is not a formal story or anything with a big punchline at the ending, but I just remember things like this. He played it incessantly, and that's why he learned. He just kept going and going and going. And he would go into the bathroom, and after your Valentine's story, this isn't too rogue a story for me to tell, I guess. And he would go into the bathroom and sit on the toilet and play. And play and play and play. And I needed to get in there. And I would walk by the door, and we didn't have an amplifier in there, thank heavens. But the bathtub gave it some reverb anyway, and the surrounds. But I would go by the door and just hear, and then I would go by 20 minutes later, and I said, when is his lead going to end here? And, anyway, that and all the other unique things that you associate with Karl. When he came home, it was going to be fun. It was going to be interesting. He had no end of stories, and I could not keep up with him. It was just too much coming at me at one time. He had too much information, too much knowledge, never too many stories. But anyway, like I said, I wasn't really going anywhere, but I wanted to say something to color up the story of who my brother Karl was just a little bit more. So thank y'all, and thank everybody for coming.
I'm limited. Just look at me. I'm limited. And just look at you. You can do all I couldn't do, Linda. So now it's up to you. Now it's up to you. people come into our lives for a reason, bringing something we must learn, and we are led to those who help us most to grow if we let them, and we help them in return. Well, I don't know if I believe that's true, but I know I'm who I am today because I knew you. Like a comet pulled from orbit as it passes a sun, like a stream that meets a boulder halfway through the wood. Who can say if I've been changed for the better? But because I knew you, I have been changed for good. It well may be that we will never meet again in this lifetime. So let me say before we part, so much of me is made of what I learned from you. You'll be with me like a handprint on my heart. And now whatever way our stories end, I know you have rewritten mine by being my friend. Like a ship blown from its mooring by a wind off the sea, like a seed dropped by a skybird in a distant wood. Who can say if I've been changed for the better? But because I knew you, because I knew you, I have been changed for good. And just to clear the air, I ask forgiveness for the things I've done you blame me for. But then I guess we know there's blame to share, and none of it seems to matter anymore. Like a comet pulled from orbit as it passes a by a wind off the sea, like a stream that meets a boulder halfway through the wood. Who can say if I've been changed for the better? I do believe I have been changed for the better. And because I knew you, because I knew you, because I knew you, I have been changed for good.
Keep a fire burning in your eye. Pay attention to the open sky. You never know what will be coming down. I don't remember losing track of you. You were always dancing in and out of view. I must have thought you'd always be around. Always keeping things real by playing the clown. how you're nowhere to be found. I don't know what happens when people die. I can't seem to grasp it as hard as I try. It's like a song I can hear playing right in my ear that I can't sing. I can't help listening, and I can't help feeling stupid standing around, crying as they ease you down. 'Cause I know that you'd rather we were dancing, dancing our sorrow away. Right on dancing, no matter what there's nothing you can do. Just do the steps that you've been shown by everyone you've ever known, until the dance becomes your very own. No matter how close to yours another steps have grown, in the end there is one dance you'll do alone. Keep a fire for the human race, and let your prayers go drifting into space. You never know what will be coming down. Perhaps a better world is drawing near, just as easily it could all disappear, along with whatever meaning you might have found. Don't let the uncertainty turn you around. The world keeps turning around, and make a joyful sound. Into a dancer you have grown, from a seed somebody else has thrown. Go on ahead and throw some seeds of your own, and somewhere between the time you arrive and the time you go may lie a reason you were alive that you'll never know. season, turn, 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 and their time to every purpose under heaven. A time of love, a time of hate, a time of war, a time of peace, a time you may embrace, a time to refrain from embracing. To everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn.